President, please be seated. The chamber is now back in session, and the floor is given to the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor to resume questioning to the witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, before the break, we were talking about the identity of the Central Zone Secretary, and you had indicated that you thought his name was Pol Pot. You've now had a chance to review a second statement that you gave, and I'll just reread the relevant quote from that statement. And again, for the record, the ERN pages are English 0072 2241, Khmer 0071 6487, and French 0072 7597. And this is what it says in the statement. It says, quote, "In fact, Kai Pok served as Secretary of the Central Zone, but after the arrest of people in the East, Kai Pok was assigned to control this region," referring to your region, unquote. So having read that, does that refresh your memory regarding
President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. And the floor is given to Mr. Kope. You may now proceed.
Look, thank you, Mr. President. I have in front of me another document, E3/5209.1, English ERN 01153 French 01152 and Khmer 01151 which is a partial transcription of audio file D125/104R, and it's the interpreter talking to the witness. And it says as follows: "But you said that you heard this. You clearly heard that a name during the meeting was K. Pok." And then the witness answers, "At that time it was Pol Pot, not K. Pok. That was a brother of Pol Pot. One was Pok and another one was Pot." Pok? Yes, they were brothers. So for the completeness of the record, I think this should be presented to the witness as well, because he clearly seems to indicate that there are two people, Pol Pot and K. Pok, and he refers to them as brothers.
Mr. President, I apologize. This is an oversight on my part. I had not seen that document. I've called it up now. And it does seem to indicate that the witness said Pol Pot. So, Mr. Witness, it appears that in one statement you've said that the Secretary of the East Zone was named Pol Pot, as you said today. In a subsequent statement, you used the name Kai Pok. Can you tell us your best memory of what the name was, if you're able to help us on that issue?
I do not know his real name, but the inhabitants living there call him sometime Kao Pok, sometime Pol Pot.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Now, I asked you a few minutes ago about him traveling to the East Zone, and I think you said that you had heard about perhaps a couple of visits to Krochmar. I want to turn to another topic now, which is the topic of this person, who I'll just refer to as Pok. summoning leaders from the East Zone to meetings in the Central Zone. Did you ever learn about POC summoning leaders from the East Zone to meetings in the Central Zone?
No, I did not hear about this. I only heard the local inhabitants sometimes calling him Cao Pok, sometimes Pol Pok from the Central Zone.
Okay, and I want to ask you now about something that you said in your second interview, so the one that you've just had the chance to read. And this is English page 0072, 2241, Khmer page 0071, 6487, and French page 0072, 7597. So you were being asked about this person, Pok, how often he came to the East Zone, and you mentioned a couple of visits to Krochmar district that you said you had heard about. But then you go on to say the following, quote, "But very often I knew he convened East Zone leaders to meetings in the Central Zone, Kampong Thom province, whose secretary he served as," unquote. Now, having heard that, does that refresh your memory? Do you know anything about POC summoning East Zone leaders to meetings in Kampong Thom?
Yes, I remember at that time, Chumni commune chief told me that the chief of the mobile units needed to go to the meeting in the Central Zone.
And did that happen on only one occasion, or did that happen on more than one occasion, that you heard that East Zone cadres had to go to a meeting in the Central Zone?
I heard only once that the mobile brigade chiefs needed to go to attend a meeting in the Central Zone.
Okay, so you told us that it was the Chumni commune chief who told you that mobile unit chiefs needed to go to this meeting in the Central Zone. What happened after that?
Not the mobile unit chiefs, but the commune chiefs and district chiefs who went there to attend the meeting.
And did you go to this meeting as well?
No, I did not go to attend the meeting. Because I did not hold any position, I was just simply an ordinary person.
Did you travel to the location of that meeting with someone?
At that time, the commune chief asked me to drive the boat to Steng Trong. And at Steng Trong, he did not know how to drive the motorbike, so he asked me to drive the motorbike for him. And at the meeting, Kao Pok spoke on the microphone. I was not at the meeting, I was waiting outside, and I heard on the microphone that every sectors from the East Zone attended the meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. So now tell us again who it was that you drove on the motorcycle to the location of the meeting. Was it a commune chief or a district chief?
It was the commune chief. As for the district chief, he had his own messenger to drive the motorbike for him.
Do you remember the name of the commune chief that you drove to this meeting?
Yes, I can still remember. His name is Hun.
Was he the chief of Chumnik commune or some other commune?
He was the commune chief of Chumnet. He was assigned to hold the position of the commune chief of Chumnet after the evacuation took place.
Can you tell us as precisely as you're able where this meeting took place? What commune, district, and zone, sector and zone, if you can?
I can still remember. It was called Kampung Thmo.
And what district, sector, and zone was that in?
At that time, it was said that Kampung Thmo was located in Central Zone.
Okay, you've told us that you weren't attending the meeting because you had a low position, but you said you were able to hear what was happening because they were using a loudspeaker. Can you describe the building? What kind of building was this that the meeting took place in? What was the construction? What were the walls made out of?
The building was made from concrete with tile roof and wooden windows.
And where were you located? Were you outside the walls? Were you somehow underneath the building?
President, please hold on. I was near the building, but I was outside the building.
So given that it was a concrete construction, can you tell us how you were able to hear what was happening inside?
President, Mr. Witness, please observe the microphone. The building had a tile roof and had wooden windows, so that's why I could hear the sound outside.
Okay, and I think you said a moment ago that you heard on the microphone that every sector from the East Zone attended. Can you tell us, as specifically as you remember, what exactly was said about the attendees at that meeting?
I heard from the loudspeaker that the new chiefs assigned to the East Zone needed to implement the policy of the ANCA regarding the smashing of the jam. And some of them answered that they had implemented 50% of the policy. Some said they had implemented 80% of the policy. Because ANCA gave the instruction to smash 100% of the jam, and the targeted group that needed to be smashed needed to be the ones who betray the ANCA regardless of their ethnicity, whether Cham or Khmer. So the people who were accused of betraying ANCA were collected and smashed.
Okay, you just said that it was said at the meeting that, excuse me, the lower level cadres needed to implement the policies of Ankar regarding the smashing of the Cham. Do you remember, or were you able to tell who said that?
The chief who introduced the presiding person of the meeting, and that presiding person of the meeting was Kao Pok, who encouraged the chiefs and cadres who attended the meeting to implement the ANCA's policy.
And you also mentioned something about some people saying something had been 50% accomplished, some people saying something had been 80% accomplished. Who was it, if you know, that was saying the plan has been 50% accomplished or 80% accomplished?
I heard from the commune chief of Chumnik, who said that he had achieved 50% of the policy. But for other commune chiefs, I did not know.
Did you hear anything about any kind of deadline being given at the meeting?
I only heard that when the attendees returned to their bases, they needed to implement and achieve 100% of the ANCA's policy.
Do you recall how long this meeting lasted, approximately?
It lasted more than 2 hours.
I want to turn now to the events following the meeting that you've described. After the meeting, did the Chumnik Commune Secretary say anything to you about the meeting or the things you heard?
He told me that whatever I heard at the meeting, I needed to keep it to myself and not to spread it to anyone else.
Did he know that you were Cham?
At the beginning, he did not know that I was a Cham. Later on, through our relationship, he assigned me to go here and there. For example, like I went with him in the boat, engine boat, and I rode the motorbike for him.
You told us a moment ago that he told you not to spread the information. Did you follow that instruction, or did you tell anyone about what you had heard?
He told me that.
When you returned to Chamnik, did you tell anyone about what you had heard at the meeting?
Yes, I told my friends in the mobile brigade that the situation was not normal, that we would be targeted, so we fled into the forest.
And when you say you told your friends in the mobile brigade, you've told us that there were both Cham and Khmer in this mobile brigade. Did you tell both the Cham and the Khmer? Did you tell only the Cham? Did you tell only the Khmer?
I told both the Khmer and the Cham. Both the Khmer and the Cham in the mobile unit, and I told them to be careful because the situation could become worse.
I want to ask you now about events that happened in Chamnik village a few days after this meeting. Can you tell us what happened in Chamnik village in the days after this meeting?
After the meeting, they evacuated the Cham people.
And can you tell us in a bit more detail how the evacuation was carried out? For example, who told you that you had to evacuate?
During the evacuation, they had big engine boats to evacuate the people along the river. So there had been 2 or 3 rounds of evacuation before my turn that I was evacuated. And the evacuees, including adults, women, and children.
You've told us that the evacuees included adults, women, and children. The evacuees that you were aware of, were they a mix of Cham and Khmer, or were they predominantly Cham, predominantly Khmer, or all of one ethnicity?
ពីជំនះភាគច្រើនចាម
Among the evacuees, mostly were Cham. Only a small minority were Khmer, who were people who had been evacuated from Phnom Penh.
And of the remaining Cham population of Chamnik, do you know what portion of the remaining Cham population of Chamnik was evacuated at that time?
About 30% remained.
And when you say about 30% remained, do you mean 30% remained following the evacuation you're talking about now, or 30% remained before the evacuation you're talking about now?
នៅសល់
30% remained after the evacuation.
On the day that you personally were evacuated, do you remember how you found out that you would have to leave on that day? Who told you?
The deputy commune chief told us that we needed to be evacuated. So, because I was told that I needed to be evacuated, so I went along with them. And when we arrived, I told my friends that the situation could be dangerous for us, so we jumped into the water. At Steng Trong, the Khmer cadre came to tie us up, and they told us that they would tie us up for 5 minutes before we got on land. So they told the people on the boat that they would be tied up, and the people on the boat agreed, and they used a string of about 10 meters to tie the people in line. But for me, along with some of my friends, we jumped into the water and we escaped.
And can you tell us what happened after you jumped into the water? Was there any attempt to prevent you from escaping?
Because I saw that people were tied up, so I could not trust them. So I needed to jump into the water. And because of jumping into the water, it saved my life. And I survived until nowadays. And some of other people also jumped into the water, but because their hands were tied up, so some of them could not escape.
Were there any armed men on the boat that took you to Stung Trang?
Yes, in each boat there were 2 or 3 persons, and at Stung Trang there were cadres there waiting to receive us. Yes, that was in Stung Trang district.
Okay, I'll return to the events. Sorry, one more question on that. The armed men on your boat, did they shoot at you after you jumped off the boat?
បាទមានបាញ់
Yes, they shot many bullets. But because it was night time, so their bullets could not accurately target me.
Okay, I'll come back to the events at Stongchong and your subsequent escape. Those are both very important, but I want to make sure we understand the entire story. So I'm just going to go back in time a little bit. You mentioned that it was the deputy commune chief who told you you needed to evacuate on that day. Do you remember his name?
President, Mr. Witness, please observe the microphone.
ឈ្មោះអូនមួយឈ្មោះ
The persons were On and How.
Okay, and did they tell you why you needed to evacuate?
They did not tell us the reason. They simply said that Angka required us to be evacuated.
Did you see anyone who refused to evacuate, and if so, what happened to that person?
President, Mr. Witness, please observe the microphone. Yes, there were people who refused to get on the boat, and then they were arrested and beheaded and thrown into the river.
Now that's something that you mention in your OCIJ statement. In your OCIJ statement, you seem to indicate that that happened to one person. Did that happen to one person or to multiple people?
There was only one who dared to protest because his family were not evacuated. Only he alone was evacuated, so he refused. As for the jams, we were afraid, so we followed the order. And as for that man, because his family were not evacuated, so he refused to go. And that's why he was arrested and killed.
Now, did you actually board the boat at Chamnik, or did you board the boat at some other location?
We were asked to walk from Chumnik to Svai Damna village. It's about a kilometer away. Then we reached that village of Svai Damna, which was situated along the riverbank. People who had to be evacuated were gathered at the Svai Damna pagoda.
So how many people were walking along with you as you went from Chumnik to Svai Damnak?
There were between 400 to 500 people at a time. As for the motorboats, there were between 4 to 5.
Once you arrived at Svai Damnak Pagoda, was your group of 400 to 500 people joined by any other groups, or were you the only group there at Svai Damnak?
No, only the people from Chumnik village were gathered up there. So people were put in that own place, and it's easier for them to control before the evacuation. And Swadamna Pagoda was located near the commune office. And in fact, the dining hall of the pagoda was used as the commune office.
You told us earlier that the people evacuated with you were primarily Cham, with also a certain percentage of Khmer who had come from Phnom Penh. Are you able to give us an approximate percentage breakdown in those two groups? Can you tell us approximately what percent Cham and approximately what percent Khmer from Phnom Penh, if you're able?
The Cham people comprised about 98% of the group, and there was only about 2% of Khmer who were evacuated from Phnom Penh. Actually, they were gathered after many of them died in the forest, and they were placed in that village.
I want to ask you about something from your first OCIJ statement. This is E3/5209, English page 0024, 2068, Khmer page 0021, 8538, and French 0029, 3938. And you were asked what happened after you went to the meeting where you heard this person, Pok, speak. And you said, quote, "Thousands of people, including men, women, and children, were evacuated before me." Why do you say thousands of people? What were you referring to there?
Because the evacuation policy actually took place earlier. So thousands of people had been evacuated, and usually each day there were between 4 to 5 motorboats used for the purpose of the evacuation.
When you arrived at Svaidamnak, did you board the boats immediately, or did anything happen in the dining hall where you were gathered before you boarded the boats?
No food was given to us. We were instructed to wait there, and only when the night fell, we were instructed to board the boats. So we kept sitting there until the time that we were instructed to board the boat.
You've said there were 4 to 5 motorboats. How many people could each boat carry?
It depended on the size of the boat. Usually it could accommodate between 100 to 200 people per each.
And you've mentioned that there were armed men in each boat. Approximately how many armed men in each boat?
There were between 2 to 3 of them per boat. And I could see it when I was boarding the boat. And at that time it was around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I saw those soldiers on each boat. There were about 2 of them on the smaller boat and about 3 on the bigger boats.
How were they armed? What weapons did they have?
They carried AK rifles, that is AK-47.
And you've told us, I think, that you then traveled by boat to Stong Trang. Did all the boats travel together in a group? Did they all arrive at approximately the same time?
Yes, we departed at the same time. However, when we arrived, the women and children disembarked first, while men remained on the boats. And later on, men were tied up before they were allowed to disembark the boats.
And do you remember anyone mentioning anything about looking for traders at that time?
Yes, they said that we were evacuated by UNCTAD to the central zone in order to ease the situation in the east zone, and there were traders in the east zone, and UNCTAD would also, when UNCTAD actually gave logistic support to the east zone, including rice and clothing, they actually, those traders in the east zone actually gave it to the enemy, and that is the reason we were evacuated from the eastern zone to the central zone.
You've mentioned that there was a group of cadres there to meet you when the boat arrived. Can you describe the group of people who were meeting the boat? In other words, not the ones who traveled with you on the boat, but the ones who were waiting for you. How were they dressed? What were they carrying? Did they say anything?
They dressed in a military uniform.
ខោអាវយូធារបស់
That is the military uniform of the Khmerus.
Were they carrying any weapons?
Yes, each one of them was armed.
And what kind of weapon did they have?
As I said earlier, they carried AK-47s.
Now I'm going to jump ahead for just a moment. Following the end of the Khmer Rouge era, following the Vietnamese invasion, did you ever return to Chumnik village?
When I returned to Jumnik village, I told those people in the mobile units to flee to the forest so that we could not be killed. So they followed me into the forest. And about 2 months after, the liberation force arrived in the area. And we stayed in the forest for about 2 months during that time.
Okay, perhaps I'll return now to your escape. You told us that you jumped into the water, bullets were fired at you, but they didn't hit. What did you do then? Where did you go? The Mekong is a big river. How did you make it to whatever your next destination was?
I jumped into the forest, and when I knew that I was a bit far, then I tried to swim across to the other side of the river bank, and I saw a lot of floating corpses, So then I hang on to one, and then I swam along the tide of the river.
And I think you've just told us that after you eventually made landfall, you went to find your mobile unit and told people something. What did you tell them, and what did you all do then?
I told them that their plan was that those evacuees had been killed and that they were tied up. And upon hearing that, all the people in the mobile unit fled into the forest because we knew that they actually tear pieces of scarves in order to tie the remaining members of the mobile unit in their plans to kill them later. And then we fled into the forest.
And I think you mentioned in your OCIJ statement something about engaging in some kind of armed resistance. Can you describe that for us, just briefly?
I spoke with workers from the mobile units that if we did not retaliate, then we would be killed. But then others said that we had no weapons. Then others said that they saw this O9 group who actually hid some weapons in a well. So we went to that well and we found some weapons. And then we attacked those soldiers who were actually hurting people to board the boats to prevent them from doing that. Then we actually shot at the boats and sank some boats. And at that time, the people dispersed and fled into the forest. And then my group remained in the area in order to defend the villagers and to retaliate the Pol Pot group. And we actually had some weapons with us.
From the operation you just described, it sounds like you were trying to disrupt evacuations, further evacuations. Is that correct?
Our plan was to disrupt them and to prevent them from killing more people. And we knew that if we did not retaliate, then we would be dead anyway. And luckily, our retaliation succeeded. And a few months later, the liberation forces arrived, and that's how we survived the ordeal. Because at that time they actually came to hurt people from the area every single day. They came to look for people in the houses, but the houses were empty because we actually had the people with us living in the forest.
You said a moment ago that when you went back to the mobile unit, you told them that the people evacuated with you had been killed. What made you think that the people evacuated with you had been killed?
Among them, I knew some people. And actually I was told that those evacuees had been killed. Then I realized that Pol Pot killed people And actually, some people who were tied up, and while they were disembarking the boat and walking on a piece of plank, they slipped and fell into the water, and then they shot those people dead.
You've told us that you stayed in the forest until the liberation arrived. After the liberation, that is, after the Vietnamese invasion, did you then go back to your village of Chamnik?
Yes, I did. I returned to Chumnik after that.
And can you tell us approximately what percentage of the original Cham population of Chamnik was in that village or returned to that village after the Vietnamese invasion?
I cannot say for a certain on this topic. There were quite many of them remained.
Of the 400 or 500 people who were evacuated with you, are you aware of having seen any of those people, of the ones you remember? Did you ever see any of those people again after the Vietnamese invasion?
No, none of them was left. They never returned to the village. And before our group, there were thousands and thousands of people who were killed.
And can you tell the court how long you remained in Chamnik village, and what year did you move to Krachi provincial town?
I lived in Chumnik since I was born, and I moved to Krachi province in 1991.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Thank you for answering my questions. Mr. President, I've concluded my exam. I've promised my colleagues from the civil parties 20 minutes. I know we started at about 15 minutes late this morning, so I hope there's still sufficient time for them to have a 20-minute examination.
President, yes, civil party lawyers, you may proceed. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Lead co-lawyers would like to assign Madam Chiet Van Lee to put questions to the witness, and she may need about 20 minutes. President, yes, your request is granted. Chiet Van Lee, good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, everyone in the courtroom. My name is Chiet Van Lee. I'm a lawyer for civil parties, and good morning, Mr. Witness. Mr. Witness, you have testified before this chamber since this morning about what happened to you, and I'd like to continue where the Deputy Co-Prosecutor stopped questioning you. Can you tell the court in what year that you were taken by boat to be killed, but you survived because you jumped into the river? Answer. That happened in 1978. Question. On the day that you departed on the boat, and you also said that it was the last evacuation, can you tell the chamber how many boats altogether, and what was the reason that men were tied up and not the women and children? Answer. They demanded men to be tied up because, of course, men were stronger than women. However, the evacuation was not the last. In fact, when we returned, we disrupted many more evacuations. Otherwise, all the people in the East Zone would have been killed. And when I said that we may be the last group who was evacuated at the time, because there had been more groups who had been evacuated earlier. So that is the event in relation to the evacuation. And later on, when we ran into the forest, we came back to disrupt the evacuation plans. Question. Did you know about the fate of women and children whom were not tied? Did you know what happened to them? Answer. No, I did not, because women and children were put on separate boats. Although we departed at the same time, I did not know where they actually landed. Question. However, did you know whether those women and children were also killed? Answer. It was certain that they had been killed, because after I actually made landfall, I never saw them returned. Question. Can you also tell the chamber, were those people mainly Chams, that is those who boarded the boat and later were killed? Answer. Yes, primarily they were Chams. Almost 100% of them were Cham. There could be only about 2% Khmer. Question. Regarding the plan that you described from early this morning, did you know from which level the plan was initiated? Answer. We only heard that it was Angkar's plan, but I did not know from which level the plan was initiated. Of course, Angkar referred to the upper echelon. Question. When you refer to the upper echelon Angkar, did you know or hear of any names that were said that they were part of this upper echelon Angkar? Answer. We mostly heard of Pol Pot's name, who was the senior leader. Question. I'd like now to move on to another topic. This morning you testified that from 1975 the Cham people were under depression and that they were forced to work hard and that they were prohibited from practicing their customs and traditions. My question to you is the following. Since Cham people did not eat pork, what food was given to you while you were working at the work site? Answer. When they had pork to eat, we try to eat something else. We ate salt, for example, because we could not eat pork. Question. While you were at the work site, Could you describe the living condition of the Cham people? Whether the work they did, whether the way they lived, were they similar to that of the Khmer people? Answer: we were a subject of monitoring by Angkar, and we were under this constant surveillance more than the Khmer people. And the food was not sufficient for us, and we had to work more than the Khmer people. Question: and while you were still at the work site, did the Khmer rules know that you were a Cham person? President, witness, please observe the microphone. Answer: the previous Angkar knew that I was Cham, but the later group did not know that I was Cham, and there were successive replacements of these people, and the situation became stricter after each successive replacement. Question: you said that Cham people were prohibited from practicing their religion and traditions of prayer. Was there any Cham person who actually violated the order of the Khmer rules and who prayed in secret? Answer: we did not dare to practice our religion or prayed. We only prayed in our mind, but not physically. Question: did the Khmer rules make an announcement in public, that is through a meeting, or were the Cham people gathered up and then they were told that they were banned from doing certain things, or was it done on an individual basis for each Cham person? Answer: we were called to an open meeting where the announcement was made. Question: what was the announcement? Answer: they announced that we should not believe in our superstitious religion. We were prohibited to practice our Islamic religion. Question: this morning you also testified that the Holy Quran texts were destroyed. They were used inappropriately. Did any people actually try to hide those holy texts? And if so, if they were found out, what happened to them? Answer: some people actually hid the Quran text in a jar or under the ground. And the rest were collected from each house and destroyed. Question: during the Khmer Rouge regime, you were prohibited from your religious practice and not to fast. Can you tell us what happened to you during the Ramadan? Were you allowed to fast, or you could not know when Ramadan fell? Answer: by that time we did not know when the Ramadan fasting season fell. We only learned of it again after 7 January 1979. During the regime, we did not even know what day it was. Question: according to the Islamic religion, you were prohibited from killing a pig or eating pork. During the Khmer Rouge regime, did you know that whether the Khmer Rouge forced you to raise pigs or to eat pork? And yes, the Khmer Rouge actually forced us to raise pigs. And later on, they were forced to eat pork. And some of them dare not refuse, and they ate pork, and then later on they vomited. Mr. President, may I have 5 more minutes to conclude my questioning? President, yes, you may proceed. Question. During the Khmer Rouge regime, did the Cham people speak their own Cham language, or did they speak Khmer? Answer, they spoke Khmer. We were banned from speaking the Cham language. Question. Was it difficult for you to communicate in the Khmer language, since usually Cham language was your language? Answer, of course it was beyond difficulty, but what could we do? If we were to speak Cham, we would be taken away and killed. So we tried to force ourselves to speak the Khmer language for our communication, and some Cham people did not speak Khmer fluently. Counsel, please turn on the microphone. Question. During the Khmer Rouge regime, did the children of the Cham people were gathered up by the Khmer Rouge in a center, that is where they separated from their children? And did you, as a parents of the Cham children, teach them to speak the Cham language or the Khmer language? Answer. At that time, young children were gathered in one place to collect cow dungs for fertilizer, and there were an older woman who would look after them, and then they were instructed to speak the Khmer language. Counsel, this is my last question, Mr. Witness. During the Khmer Rouge regime, were you allowed to live with your wife and children, or were you separated to different work sites? Answer, we were separated. We were not allowed to live together with wives and children. Counsel, thank you, Mr. Witness. I thank you for your responses to my question, and Mr. President, I conclude my session. President, thank you. It is now appropriate for our lunch break. We take a break now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon to continue our proceedings. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses and civil parties, and invite him back into the courtroom at 1:30 this afternoon. Security personnel, you are instructed to take Kyo Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and have him returned to attend the proceedings this afternoon before 1:30. The court is now in recess.